Hey guys, welcome back to the Bookhaven with Rachel and Raven. I'm Raven. This is
Oh,
Rachel.
Rachel.
We are so glad you're here. We are going to grab our Stanleys or your tea, whatever you have today. I happen to have both. So today we're going to talk, it's going to be a fun episode. We're going to talk a little bit about Christian romance novels and what our hot take is on those. So, do you want me to start? This is kind of going to be like a little bit of an opinion piece.
Yes.
You may not agree with us, but we hope that it is at least thought-provoking.
Yes.
So, what should we talk about first?
I think I will say this. So I think that really the only Christian romance I have read is I did read Redeeming Love, and I have read her Francine Rivers Mark of the Lion series. I don't know if you'd necessarily put Nicholas Sparks in Christian romance, but that's all the experience I have with it is just those Francine Rivers books then. So do you want to start it? Because you've read more than me.
Yeah. So when I was a teenager and I would go to the library, I was directed towards like the Christian romance novels. So think, if you remember Jeanette Oak, she had the series Love Comes Softly. So I actually think maybe my mom had that book in our house. And so I grabbed it off the shelf and started reading it. And those books are, innocent in the sense of, I don't know, they're innocent and like there's no graphic details in those books. So
would you say like closed door romance, or it stops before it even gets that far?
Yeah, it pretty much stops before it even gets that far.
Okay.
It's a lot more, and this is going to be this is where my problem is going to lie. Okay. It's a lot more emotional, intimacy is what I would say, like the emotional romance of it, I guess. But anyways, I read a lot of those types of books. Like I devoured them. And it wasn't until I was an adult and I was trying to get back into reading, and because that was pretty much the only reading that I had done by that point in my life. So I was married, and then I decided to pick up one of these books again and start back to my reading life. And I realized very quickly that those books were very problematic because I feel like they set you up for just this very false expectation. So they're not graphic, but they are very much, the guy is perfect. I mean,
like a Disney princess kind of story, like happily ever after. Yeah.
Yes. And there isn't, and I don't know how to describe it. So it's not like an addiction to how some people would be addicted to reading these very graphic romance novels. And back then I would have been like, oh, I'm never going to read those things. But I actually have an opinion, and I believe that these books are just as problematic because they set girls up for this. They create this expectation that girls have of men in their life, and this, like what you said, the Disney princess type of thing. And, but kind of next level up, I would say. And I just think that is very unhealthy. At least for me, because, in my mind, if I'm reading those types of books, that's really the expectation, even if I'm not purposely doing it, that I'm putting on my spouse. And really, it's not real life. It's just not real life. And it's just like this fantasy world of, it's not real. So those, I had to put those books aside because I realized those were going to be a problem for me. And I wouldn't be able to read them. And you put in there, there's this whole thing of like, well, because it's Christian romance, that it's good, but that's not true. And actually, a lot of these books, especially now, kind of really border on that line of appropriate or inappropriate.
Yeah.
But because
Yeah.
they've got the Christian romance fiction, whatever, that it's somehow it's fine. And I would say some of the newer Christian romance also, they play with that a lot. And um, what is the word that I'm trying to think? There is this, I think it kind of crosses over into this sin of lust. And I think it's just, it's not appropriate. It's not good. So I had to quit reading those, and I quick I quickly realized that I had to put those aside because those were not going to be good for me. They were not going to be beneficial for me at all. And so some people would say, well, you don't read that, but then you read something like what we just talked about a few weeks ago about the women. And there is some romance in there, right? But it's not a uh, romance novel. There's romance in there.
Right.
And there are, I say romance very loosely, but, and so to me, in my mind, it's very different. And also, yes, some of those books are a little bit more graphic, but you can see it coming. It's not sneaky like this innocent way that I see it in the Christian
Yeah.
romance novels. You see the inappropriate coming, and then you, I don't know. For me, I just skip over that
Fast
part.
forward.
I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah.
I just fast forward, and I'm not like, I don't know. People have asked me, well, like, how can you read this, but you don't read this? This is innocent. This isn't graphic at all. Yeah, because it's so under the undertone or the underlying thing. It's so sneakily in there. Does
Mm-hmm.
that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
Versus this is so blatant and I can like completely skip over it. It's not the entire book. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there was another book that I could relate that to that we've read.
Well,
And
I think
a lot of them are Kristen Hannah. That's what's in my head right now.
but I think you have you bring up a good point as far as the Christian romance, because I think a lot of times, especially Christians will think, oh, well, if it's been categorized in that, then it's been like vetted as appropriate or
Yeah.
okay. I don't even know what the requirements are for being in um, like what makes it Christian. I don't know. Versus just regular romance or like closed door romance. Like I don't know what the difference is, but I do think that it's almost worse, like you said, because if something is happening and I can see it coming, I can fast forward. Or I can just abstain from those types of books completely. But when you are being sold this bill of goods of like, well, it's actually Christian and it's not, you know, I mean, a lot of the times these books are presented as like a good option for you in growing your faith. So I know
Yeah.
the whole reason why we kind of wanted to discuss this is because way back when Redeeming Love movie was coming out, and I read the book for the first time, and I was just shocked that people were so into this, and just, you know, for those that don't know, without giving a spoilery whatever, it's based on a book in the Bible, like Hosea, right? Or is that just a story in the Bible? Is it a book
Yeah, it's based on the
or
book.
story?
It's a
Okay.
book.
Okay, but like the book in the Bible. Okay. So it's based on that very loosely. Very, very loosely. Because I know when I was doing my Bible reading and I finally got to that part that nobody ever reads, I was like, what? How did she even get from this point to this point? Um, but people acted like that with such a you know, there were big groups of people going and watching that movie, like church groups, women groups. And that story is about a girl who gets sold into prostitution and keeps going back to prostitution. Like, we're not like like, is it a beautiful story of redemption? Like, I never really fully got on that train of did he keep pursuing her when she was going, like, it was just a real grasping at straws, I felt like. And the fact that so many um Christian women were like on this train, and a lot of good people that I know that are Christians, that I know to be, you know, knowledgeable Christians. I'm trying to figure out how to say it, but kind
Yeah.
of got swept up in this movement of thinking that this is okay. But like, I still to this day have not watched that movie because I know that there are going to be things in there that I do not think are okay. Um and again, do I watch shows that maybe have those kinds of storylines and plots in them? Yes. But my problem is when you say that this is a Christian thing, and it's promoting Christ's redeeming love that he has for us in this type of way, um and to make a whole book about it, like,
Yeah.
um outside of the book of the Bible, like, it has always rubbed me the wrong way, and I'm glad that I got that off my chest. Because I know you and I have talked about it, and I'm like, what is everybody else seeing that I'm not seeing? Or like that I feel like I'm taking it a different way than how everyone else is taking it. And I do think that there is, like, I'm not saying that you're not a Christian if you got on that train.
Right.
If you enjoyed those books and you still want to defend the books or the movie or whatever, I'm just saying that as me personally, I was confused and um just, I don't know. So that's kind of where we really started talking about stuff, is when that whole wave of redeeming love kind of came through and everybody was just like, oh, this is just so amazing.
Yeah. And I remember it was you that kind of challenged me on that because I think I had read the book, I think, before, and I think
Yeah.
I really, really loved it. Right. And then you and I, you and I decided to read it together because the movie was coming out.
Hmm.
And yeah, like I think that was the same year that we were reading our Bible
I
through,
think so,
maybe
probably.
together. And so you really challenged me a little bit on that, and I think I pushed back a little bit. But like, but then I mean, so this was just a few years ago. So you see, like I picked the Christian romance. Not that I was reading a bunch of them, but I read that one. I can see for sure, more so now, especially reading through the Bible and reading through Hosea and realizing, yeah, this is a stretch to base
Yeah.
this whole story with a lot of there's a lot of what would you say? I mean, would you say it's lust in that book? I mean, there really is. There's just a lot of false expectations. Um, I don't even know how to describe that. But then I also found out that Francine Rivers used to be a very graphic romance novel like
Writer.
writer.
Yeah.
Um, and so part of me wanted to give her grace because this one was her first one coming out. Like it was the story of, I don't know, like redemption. Like and it is a story of redemption, but it, it's a lot.
Yeah.
um, so I wanted to give her that, but also if she wanted to write this story, just write the story, but don't say it's
Right.
based on the book of Hosea because
Right.
it's really not. And if you want to take the time to go read the actual story, um, yeah,
Yeah.
it's very, it's not. It's
Yeah.
not the same. They're not the
Well,
same.
and I think too there's so much, like you said, if she's coming from writing hardcore romance novels, which, let's just be honest, a lot of that is just women palatable pornography.
Yeah.
Um it that is what it's geared towards. Um and that's just what it is. So to lump it in with, like, I've taken a story from the Bible and now I've written about it, but she adds a lot of characters that are not in the Bible story. She adds a lot of extra details that are not in the Bible story. So, yes, I wish she would have just said, like, I kind of got this idea, but it's not based on this book in the Bible. Is this a great example of redemption? Yes. Is it a great example of Christ redeeming love? That's the stretch that I'm not willing to go off
Yeah.
and make. And I do think that and again, so I'm speaking about a movie that I have not seen, but just from the trailers, it looked like there was a lot of romancy time going on. and
Right.
and she's in a brothel. She's, like there's a lot of sexual content going on in that movie. And to say that like, hey, like all the ladies from the church, let's go and watch this movie together just seems a bit odd that we would get on that
Yeah.
train just because she said that she based the story on a book in the Bible and that really it's showing Christ's redeeming love. I don't know.
Yeah. And I think I have heard a lot on that movie, the book too, about how life changing it
Yes.
is. Now, I don't feel like I got on that train. Maybe I did.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I did, but like, it's so life changing. Well, if that is the case, then the actual word of God should be
Right.
transforming your life. And is it? Are you just as excited about reading that as you are reading this book with all of this extra
Yeah.
content in it? You know, I
Yeah.
mean, there is enough in the Bible
Yeah.
to,
Yes.
going on. And so, yeah, I don't know. I feel like if she wanted to write this book, just leave out. I still think it would have been problematic if you're going to put it in the category of Christian, but it's not based on the Word of God. And I think that's very misleading to a lot of people because they're like, yeah, they're going to read this, but actually, there just because it's classified as Christian doesn't mean that there's not addictive, like you were
Yeah.
talking about, things in there,
Yeah.
because it's going to make you want to read, more of that, for that content, not
Right.
because it was based on the book of Hosea,
Right.
you know.
Right.
So,
Well, and
um,
I think the point that you brought up in the very beginning is like the takeaway is what the takeaway should be is why do we have a genre of Christian romance novels? What is the why do we do that? I guess is what I'm trying to get to in the sense of putting the Christian label on romance doesn't seem like that should make it okay. And like you said, it even if we take out the sexualness of it, whatever, a lot of times there is lusting, and a lot of times, like you said, it's setting yourself up for this expectation of how your romance is going to be, how your husband should treat you, how your boyfriend should treat you. I have such a funny story that goes along with this, but it has nothing to do with Christianity, but um my husband was in the military and he had a friend when we were stationed somewhere that his girlfriend broke up with him because he was not her Edward because she had read Twilight. And it was
oh
like
my
back when
goodness.
like Twilight was so huge. But it is in the same vein of like you had a lot of, teen, early 20 girls reading Twilight and becoming obsessed with how obsessed Edward was with Bella and wanted guys to treat them that way, to be obsessed with them, to be thinking about them all the time, setting this expectation of
Right.
this. And if you have a gentleman in your life, you know that that is not how they act. And a
Mhm.
woman wrote that book. So a woman was writing what she wanted in a man. And
Yeah.
so, but it somehow, can twist and turn in your mind of like, well, but I want to be treated like that. I want things to work out this way. Um, the same happens with obviously movies, and it's not just books, but I guess my point that I'm trying to get to in the long way round is that I just don't understand why we need to have a label that says Christian, because it seems like all that's doing is giving you a green flag of, oh, I can read anything and not feel convicted or anything about this
Hmm.
story
Yeah.
or be worried that it's going to affect me in any negative way.
And it's not just Francine Rivers, so we're not
No,
like just
no.
bashing her. That's just the current, the not current, but the most recent
Yeah.
that we both read. There's other ones out there, and they're not as intense as maybe that book, but it's the same. It's the same ideas. You're setting yourself up for these false expectations, and so like for me, I was a young teenager reading these books
Yeah.
and had this view of how it was going to be and how my future spouse was going to act and be. And
Yeah.
that's just not healthy
Yeah.
to, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But it's just not healthy to it sets girls up, I feel like, for some failure. Um, Instead of having realistic expectations of how things
Yeah.
are likely to go. So I wouldn't even probably I wouldn't I don't think I would suggest Christian romance to anybody
Yeah.
at all, or even as an alternative, especially if in the past someone's had a problem. So like they've become a Christian and they used to read these types of Christian,
Yeah.
or not Christian, but like
Romance.
secular
Yeah.
romance, whatever. I wouldn't even get these as an alternative because this is just like, to me, a lower dose of the same drug. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? And
Yeah.
they're gonna end up wanting
Yeah. More.
more and more.
Yeah.
So
Well, and I think that is so confusing too. So I think that's a good like reminder that you can use books and movies as and TV shows as jumping off points to have conversations with the young people in your life. I know I'm constantly talking to my kids about the realities that are, and they see, but like what an actual marriage is, what an actual, situation is versus these hyper, you know, exaggerated love stories that we see. Because my daughter and I totally enjoy a good rom-com, or she's read A Walk to Remember. But also I spend a lot of time talking to her about the realities of these situations. We have watched Gilmore Girls and we discuss at length about, well, that choice probably wasn't the best choice for Rory to make, like
yeah.
um kind of thing. And it does lead to a good, conversation. But I think the takeaway thing, and I think the whole point to this was of this podcast was just to kind of ask our viewers and ourselves too of the
Yeah.
content that we're reading. Does it always have to be Christian themed and stuff? No, I don't believe so. But is it hindering my Christian walk, or is it adding things that are hindering? You know what I'm saying? Like, and again,
Yes.
yes, not dogging on Francine Rivers, because I just talked about in several episodes back about one of her books is really, really well done, and it's about the early
Oh yeah.
persecution of Christians. Fantastic book. I wouldn't say that that's. I don't know if that's classified as a Christian romance. It doesn't seem like it would be, but maybe it is. So I do think that there's just kind of this. I don't know. That genre to me is just confusing. And so
Hmm.
I think that was the whole point of having this conversation, is to
Yeah.
pull our listeners in, as well, of like, what do y'all think? Is this weird? Are we being overly, do you think we're being overly pious? I don't I know I have been convicted and you have been convicted. And so eh, to each their own convictions, right? I can't tell you to not do something because I feel convicted about it. There
Yeah,
are
for sure.
but there are the 10 commandments that we all need to follow. So if so I don't know. It's kind of a murky place to
Yeah,
land.
it
I don't
is.
know.
So your challenge is, are we crazy? It's okay if you think that we are. I just thought that that would be an interesting kind of conversation to have. And
or maybe or maybe if you feel like you have read Christian romance that you think is um totally opposite of what we're saying, I would totally be down for reading a book that somebody suggests um that is considered Christian romance that they feel like isn't fitting into how we're talking about it. um I'm open to that, but that has just been where we have kind of landed over the
yeah,
past few years of the books that we have read, and kind of just seen culturally how things have come about and shifted and stuff like that. So we're
yeah.
definitely not trying to go out of our way to make people upset
No, 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 no.
or to make anybody feel bad or
Right.
ashamed or anything like that. It's more of just a spark of a conversation. It's a conversation, like I said, that we have been having for a while, and we just thought it would be a fun one to kind of bring up to kind of have more
Yeah.
conversation in it.
Yeah. I think everybody definitely is on their journey. I mean, there was a
Yeah.
period of time when I was reading those books. And it did take, conviction of the Holy Spirit to convict me of those things. And so everybody's on their journey. I'm sure I'm
Yeah.
reading or watching stuff now, maybe that I shouldn't be, maybe, I don't
Yeah.
know. But when the time is
Yeah.
right, the Holy Spirit will
Yeah.
convict me, and
Yeah.
I will set that aside. But yeah, this is we kind of like having these discussions. There's no judgment. I don't want to
Yeah.
say there's like, we're, yeah, same thing. There's no shame. But I don't know. I like thought provoking conversations, and
Yeah.
yeah, Rachel's a good one to have them with.
Why would you say that?
But you're so good at challenging, of
Oh,
like, well, why do you think that, or why do you like this? Yeah. So I think that's what's fun about like talking these things out.
yeah. Yeah.
So
And this is a safe space. Like
it's a safe
there
space.
there really is no judgment because like like we've said already 5,000 times. Like wherever you are in your journey, maybe you're not even a Christian. Um that that's totally your walk. We're just saying what our life experience has been and where it has led us to, and just chatting about it so that other people can join in the conversation. I think that having a safe place where you can challenge yourself on books is always good. It's always fun to have a book friend to chat with. And if you
Mhm.
have one, we can be your book friend. But it's good in a way of just like I was saying, to allow stories to open up the door for further conversations, because really I think that's the whole point of a story.
Right.
So when you read it in a vacuum and you don't talk about it, um I know those are the books that I remember the least when I don't talk to somebody about them.
Yeah.
um because it's kind of like you read it and you experienced it, and yes, is that lovely? Yeah. But when you talk and discuss, it really just adds so much more to the experience of reading the book. So,
I also had this thought just now that, and along those same lines, well, not along the same lines as what you were talking about, but earlier, any book could be problematic. So
yeah. Oh,
I've
yeah.
heard of people that Jane Austen is a problematic book. For me, I think they're so unrealistic nowadays, right? So I don't have,
Yeah.
Mr. Darcy expectations
Let's
of
get
men in the
let's
world today.
let's discuss though, because I think that they all have issues. So maybe you're just not reading that part of the story if that's what you think. But anyways, continue on. Yes.
Yeah. So I just think that I know people that even some classical book,
Yeah.
classical, anyways, that they can be problematic for people, or
Yeah.
just completely seemingly innocent books to me, can be problematic for another person. So we're not just saying it's this one genre that, and
Yeah.
we're not saying that. We're just saying, I don't know. It's just a conversation that I
Yes.
think would be a fun one to have.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know that we're actually saying anything. We're just discussing. But
This is like a Marco Polo
yes.
where we
Yes.
talk in
You're
circles.
welcome. Yes. Where it's just like, I don't know why. I don't know why. Thanks everybody for joining us. Hopefully you made it through this really weird, murky conversation, but we really would love to know your thoughts and opinions on stuff. Do you like these kinds of conversations? Let us know in the comments, and we will go back to normal programming after this one. We just thought it would be fun to throw this in. So thanks for listening. Bye.
Oh, you gotta hit stop.
Oh!